Okay. I gotta put the links out on all the platforms as
Exactly.
always. You
But you
know.
can, next time I think we should work on like a little, not like intro, but like 10, 9, and meanwhile that happens, you can like put it on Twitter, you can plug it everywhere and so on.
Yeah, I look, man. I will remain being a happy amateur. I will never
But
professionalized.
it's good because if we're doing something fun and something cool, something good maybe, then it's worth it, I think.
I will not allow Fanged Numina to ruin the feel of this live stream, Bobby. All right, and Mr. Bobby. All right, look. So I've been tweeting a lot about this today. All right, but you know, the thing about Nick Land and the canon wars and all that, the AI singularity is really just the English language, just repurposing everything to be a part of the system, except for one thing. Except for one thing, Mr. Bobby, and that is the country party Anglo. That is the only thing that is somewhat resistant to this force. All right, now the English right. I've been tweeting this today, but like the tragedy of the English right is that by its very nature, it needs to be in the part of the system of the polemic where power is the least present. Um, which is just generally not a good place to be because once it leaves that little quadrant, it just becomes another version of the English left or Fang Denumina or however you want to describe it. All right, um, but yeah, so I will continue being a happy amateur with just this basic bitch ass streaming software playing this game with zero professionalism or preparation because that's what a good English writer would do.
All right. Okay. So what next? Let's see. Are we live?
We are live.
Wonderful.
Hold on, let me check to see if anyone's in the comments. No one is in the comments yet, but it is what it is. They'll probably float in at some point or they won't. But we'll continue. We're at peacetime. All right, Bobby.
20 years. Hearts on fire.
The last straw is growing stronger by the day. More and more names are being added to your list of potential recruits. Dress fancy tomorrow, Bronte, but don't look too rich. We're going to a salon, a gathering of young poets. Oh, this is perfect. They're all commoners, mostly new believers, so they think they aren't defying their lot by writing poetry. This will be their first meeting ever. I say we take a gander. Who knows? They could be useful. Bobby, I think hold on. Sound is a little bit loud. Here we go. You go to a small building in the very heart of the city. The first floor was once a tavern, but it has been converted into a stage with benches for the audience. The place is noisy and crowded. Those who cannot find a seat squeeze into the spaces between the benches. You and Sophia stand in the back corners, far away from each other. A young man in a threadbare jacket makes an announcement. Welcome to the first weekly gathering of the Anizate Poetry Society. The poets are all young men and women. They take turns walking up to the stage from the benches to read a poem or two of their own creation. They look humble and shy at first, but as they declaim their stanzas, their voices ring with sudden strength and daring fervor. A mighty giant with his head held high, his heavy tread, his trained and measured stride, he is an effigy of low-born life, with naught but chaff and rags and dust inside. By low-born labor granted food and clothing, he is indeed a terrifying sight. But look behind his eyes and you will find not grandeur or renown, but fear and loathing. Behold the azure skin, the bread contempt. Their past long turned to ash, their blue blood bled, their majesty in flames, their mantles rent, ensconced in diamonds white and rubies red. Their glimmering giant rots, his essence spent. The gems may glitter, but the husk is dead. What you think about that poetry, Bobby?
It's very, what was it? The glimmering skin, but not but dust inside. Go back a page. Oh.
Yep, I just went back a page.
Oh, okay. Well, exactly. Look at this one. The glimmering giant rots his essence spent. The gems may glitter, but the husk is dead. That's like, that reminds you of something, right? Huh, Paul?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it does.
Yeah. Okay, well. Okay. Let's go ahead.
The poems
it's like a poem about the end of of a reign.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, that's how all reigns end generally. Is it's like they just kind of become parodies of themselves. They may cut.
Not all reigns survive up to that point. You can also die by invasion.
Well, yeah, but we're using the Spenglerian sort of, assuming there's no outside forces intervening to cut it short at a certain point. All reigns pretty much end like that.
Because if you survive up to the stage of civilization, you're unkillable. Only from within, pretty much.
Yeah, you just kind of slowly rot and wither away. And then the new Middle Ages begins. Which has been that's been the thing I've been fucking hitting on Twitter today.
Although it is weird, the Incas and the Mayans and whatnot, they were they close to their civilizational collapse, or were they actually assuading it, throwing it far away, maybe slowing it down by sacrificing massive amounts of people? And then just conquistadors came and said the human sacrifice must end, and then they collapsed instantly, right? Well, no, they got conquered, and then they died from diseases because they didn't have smallpox and whatnot.
Well,
actually, yeah. Well, this is a question for you, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Did the growers of America, the conquistadors, and the just conquerors?
No, that's a. Are you talking about Spanish America or English America?
I'm talking about just people who came to take over the soil that then became America. Did they get any indigenous diseases?
The most famous example is syphilis. Syphilis came from the New World. And that's really the only one. I mean,
no way.
Yeah, it was I think it was common amongst the natives, and then it was spread amongst sailors, and then there was this big scare in Europe at the time. But I mean, although to be honest, the disease is mostly hollowed out South America. They didn't, and Central America. They didn't really touch North America that much. Most of the North American natives had already died of massive amounts of. I don't know if we discussed this on these live streams before, but North America, there was a huge civilization of mound builders in the Mississippi River Valley, where Cahokia is the most famous example. That's what we call it. We don't know what they called it. And it's very likely that a lot of the North American tribes, the Cherokee, the Powhatan, these are totally different subsets of groups. There's the divide between the Eastern Woodlands and the Mississippi Valley. The Chickasaw, the Creek, the Choctaw. I mean, I'm probably freaking the Creek and the Choctaw, they're the same thing. I don't care. The Mississippi River, old Alabama, Mississippi native tribes, the Great Plains tribes. It's very likely that they're all post-apocalyptic war bands that were kind of moving about the ruins of an old civilization that was probably quite sophisticated at one point, probably extremely, extremely, how should I say, extremely developed, maybe in a lot of ways other than like in terms of technology. But even the Aztecs, Bobby, the Aztecs were a foreign tribe to Central America. The Mayans weren't. The Mayans were, they had a different story, but the Aztecs, they actually migrated south into the Valley of Mexico, very likely after this sort of civilizational collapse occurred. And they migrated south into Mexico, and they were such good warriors, and they were foreigners, and they were such good warriors that they subjugated all the tribes in central Mexico. And, they kind of turned into this sort of like parasitic leech system where they had Tenochtitlan and all the cities around the Lake of Mexico, and every surrounding tribe was just kind of was in what was called the Flower Wars, subjugated. They would provide a certain number of men to be sacrificed each year, a certain number of maize and all of that. And the Aztecs, they were the big sacrificers. The Mayans, not so much. The Mayans didn't really, they would do human sacrifices, but it was kind of few and far between. But the Aztecs, man, the Aztecs were the ones who were like, literally the pyramids were caked in blood because of all the sacrifices they were doing.
I mean, they still have like bone fields or something, right?
Yep. Yeah, but that's all Aztecs. The Mayans were more or less, I think the Mayans collapsed, I don't know if it was 600 AD or if it was 1200. No, 1200 was when abouts is when the Aztecs migrated down into Mexico. But I think the Mayans were more or less gone before even the end of the first millennium. The Mayans they collapsed because of a massive ecological sort of thing. Same way, Bobby, have you ever looked into the Bronze Age collapse?
I mean, you can't look into it because there's no like written history about it.
Yeah, but have you ever read about the Bronze Age collapse?
No. I know kind of the sea peoples and all of that stuff. I know the memes, but I have never looked into it.
Well, so the Bronze Age collapse was it's actually very comparable to our current day. It was very sophisticated systems of trade that were set up between various early Mediterranean powers, all centered around Egypt, which was the sort of United States of the Mediterranean world because it grew all the food. It grew all the food in the most, consistent manner, and it had the, strongest armies and all that. And so, for example, the Hittite kingdoms would trade their famous iron for food. You had the early, I don't know if it was the Mycenaean Greeks or the pre-Mycenaean Greeks. You had the Cretans and the Phoenicians. So you had all of these like old Mediterranean peoples that were kind of this interdependent economy based around the Egyptian sort of grain trade. And all at once, there were all of these factors that were going into it. It was a stagnant system, talking about how, like we're talking about here, the reign of the Egyptian pharaohs. I don't know what dynasty this was. I've never looked into Egyptian history. I probably should, but I never have. The pharaohs were an old political establishment. They're, running rife with bureaucracy. It was a creaking system. But the thing is, it was a really safe system. It was really well established. It was really dependable. It's just the thing is, everything kind of went wrong at once. A massive series of earthquakes and droughts happened, which caused a huge shortage of food, which on their own could be survived, could be rationed for. But at that time, massive revolts were triggered. Internal revolts, that is, like peasant revolts. While that was triggered, there were also, the sea peoples who were also displaced. No one really, there are different suggestions as to where they came from, but the sea peoples, from elsewhere in the Mediterranean, they kind of showed up because the ecological disasters affected them as well, and so they were migrating. And mass migrations are always invasions. There's no difference between the two. Invasion and mass migration are generally the same thing. The reason that the Huns picked up and went west was that, it was
getting colder?
It was getting colder. Yeah, the little ice age was coming in. And so they picked up and it's like when you throw a rock into a pond, there's ripple effects. There's the first thing and so basically stagnant political system, internal revolts, ecological disasters, invading foreign armies, all of this other stuff basically all happens at once. All happens at once. And on its own, the system could have bucked any individual one of those things, or even two of those things. But the problem is that when you have a massive, hegemonic system like that with a very stable world trade network, once everything goes wrong at once, then you basically have a total system collapse. And this is the most popular idea about this era was what's called systems collapse theory. Which has interesting implications for the modern day because, Bobby, the modern day is very similar. The difference is scale. The United States is the hegemon of the world simply because it grows more food than pretty much the rest of the world combined. All right.
Corn.
Yes, sir? Yeah, corn. Yeah, exactly. And, but the thing is it's like much like I think the Bronze Age collapse, if basically every bad thing happens at once, you may have a total systems collapse.
What are we going to call this collapse? The plastic age collapse?
Probably.
The cringe age collapse?
Probably, historians might call it the Silicon era collapse or something like that, which then begins the period which then ends the Age of Terra and begins the Long Night, and the techno barbarians will take over.
I think electricity and gas generators will be a thing in the collapse. Obviously you won't be able to repair your phone, but you might have a tractor.
Yeah, but it's it just becomes another thing, techno. The strength of the modern world, a lot of people kind of misunderstand this. The strength of the modern world is not in that it is technologically sophisticated. The strength of the modern world is in that it is got a massive system of social norms and of supply chains and of circumstances which allow everything that you need or want or whatever to be massively available all at once. It's not, and technology helps that. But a computer on its own, even if you have it running calculations all day and it's one of the best computers ever, it can only really do so much. It is computers on their own aren't that big of a thing. It's just it's basically a glorified calculator.
It's demons imprisoned in silicon wafers.
I'm not gonna state my opinion on that one way or another. It's too early in the stream for schizo posting.
Well, look, Paul, I gotta tell you one thing. I think you've betrayed a little part of yourself just right now, because a person with an old soul would never say that the reason why Genghis Khan went on to conquer half of the known world at the time was climate change. All of your explanations would be legendary in that sense. You try to kind of microscope everything, every event in history up to not a tale, not a story, but a mathematical equation.
What do you mean? I try to do everything not like a tale, but a mathematical equation.
No. Not you usually try, because usually you're great, right, at this. But I caught a little part of you, a little modern part of you just right now, because when you were talking about the Sea People's invasion, you weren't telling me a story. You were telling me a a modern policy wonk analysis. You were like, well, Genghis Khan went and conquered Russia, not because he was fucking Genghis Khan, right? And he was ordered by Allah to go for. Oh, it wasn't Allah, right? It was the pagan gods at the time.
Tengri.
Maybe it was Islam, actually. I'm not sure, but but there are like statues, giant statues of Genghis Khan, and like no one says that Genghis Khan went on to conquer Russia because of climate change, even though it may be true. That's a very modern analysis of it. You know, like a person from 400 years ago, if you were to ask him, like, why did Genghis Khan conquer Christian lands, he would say, well, because he's a Muslim. He hates Christians. This is like he went on a holy war across the lands with his horde of barbarians in order to kill, maim, and rape beautiful Christians, right? And he had the devil behind him. Like we saw him fight, and fires were coming out of his eyes. His he had horns on his face, and he had giants walking around with him. Do you understand what I'm like?
So basically, you want
trying
me to reify and mythologize instead of giving you like.
No, 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 no. It's just that the we have like an example of like this is what it means to be modern. Is that you are like some imagination got lost, I guess.
Well, hmm.
It's not an insult though. It's just it is something that I've noticed because usually, I mean, usually it's like we're doing great, we're really imbibing the spirit of John Milton. But I think that both of us sometimes can go into like psychology. At least you didn't say Genghis Khan had father issues, right?
Well, I mean, look, man. All right, the modern. I was born and raised in the modern world. It is what it is. I'm gonna do some policy wonk bullshit. All right, but
True. Well, it's not bullshit though.
Whole point is that a very similar collapse happened in North America that happened in the Bronze Age, or it's very likely that this was the case. Very similar civilizational collapse happened in North America that it did in the Bronze Age. The whole Mississippi River system is, there's no reason why there wouldn't be an extremely sophisticated trading civilization there, because what's the one thing civilization follows? Rivers, right? And the United States has the largest body of inland navigable waterways. Even before we dug all the canals and stuff, it was a massive system of water. And so, you probably had a very similar, if not a Mediterranean Sea, a sort of sea of rivers within the United States that they all followed along, and that they had their various little trading cities and all that, and it was probably a very interdependent system. And, a lot of the diseases that kill them came from themselves. It didn't come from us. Usually diseases come from, domesticated farm animals. At least that's one of the theories. But
it's because the virus jumps between animal and human.
Yeah. And so maybe they did have some kind of domesticated animal, or maybe the right thing happened at the right time. Who knows? I don't.
They had llamas.
That was in South America. North America, I don't know. But
exactly.
Anyway, they all died, and the Aztecs, I think, were a part of that, and they migrated south. The Mexicans always held that the ancient home of the Aztecs was in like Colorado or Arizona or something like that, high up in the mountains, and then they moved southward. Very similar to the Comanche. The Aztecs and the Comanche were the two most savage native tribes, in the sense of like they legit, like they were so bad that every other tribe around them hated them, so much to the point that the Tonkawa, which is my favorite tribe, basically just became, their whole tribe just became scouts for the U.S. Army, just so they could fucking get a blood avenge feud against the Comanche. The Tonkawa tribe, they were like, the Comanche basically came in and slaughtered a lot of them. And so the Tonkawa were, they were basically dead as a tribe. All their women were dead. And so they just decided, fuck it, last blaze of glory. Let's become scouts for the U.S. Army and just destroy destroy the Comanche. And that's basically what happened, Anyway, Bobby.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, we
we're
can continue. That was actually great. That was a big, big American history and just civilizational history part.
well. I'm an autist, Bobby. It is what it is.
Oh,
Um, you
I don't think you're autistic. You do have uh, a wife after all.
well, yeah, but we don't talk about that here.
Oh,
Uh, but but don't even get me started. By the way, on the I was posting about the Chesapeake Bay yesterday and how it kind of, there's this theory pushed by the historian Fernand Braudel, and he's got a 2-volume work called The Mediterranean and the Mediterranean Age, or Mediterranean World in the Age of Philip II. And one of those things he kind of pushes in that book is that civilizations generally come from peninsulas. Great civilizations generally come from peninsulas. And Virginia in the Chesapeake Bay is nothing but fucking peninsulas. And I recently I was posted about this, and I thought, well, that's probably why most of the American political traditions started in Virginia, because they had this whole inland mini Mediterranean that was the Chesapeake Bay. But I'm not going to get into that yet, Bobby. We're going to go back to doing what we said we're supposed to be doing, which is
let's go ahead. Hearts on fire.
Keep
We're
playing
going to read more
Cervantes.
poetry. More poetry. Let's go ahead.
The poems recited on stage display exceptional variety. Rhymed couplets, blank verse, short stanzas, lengthy cantos, pathos-laden ballads, vulgar screeds. Oh, based. Vulgar screeds, that's what I do. Humorous epigrams, scathing tirades. But in each and every voice you hear the same pain, the same weary ache born of servitude, the gnawing grievance with the gods, the simmering rage against the empire, and dreams of another destiny, another life, another existence, based Faustianism. A commoner! The word is like a brand. The twins themselves once told me to be silent. I want to scream! Can't take this anymore. The misery around me knows no end. Bobby, this is a leftist political gathering because all this poetry sucks.
It's called... What is it called? It's called, what are leftist poems called? Slam poetry. That's what it is.
Yeah, it just sucks. It's bad. Slam poetry. Another, what what slam poetry means, Bobby? You know what that stands for in regards to poetry?
Garbage.
It means you want to slam the fucking book shut because it's so bad.
You want to curb slam the person performing in front.
Roundhouse kick a slam poet. Curb stomp a slam poet. The gentlefolk just beat us and demean us. The young, the old, the poor, the sick, the tired, they tread upon us, gazing at the heavens that feed upon our sweat-soaked suffering. They're not snapping. They should be snapping. They shouldn't be clapping. Every poem fills the room with loud applause. Every line resounds in people's hearts. This as much is clear from their faces. Some mark every word in verse with a nod, while others cannot hold back tears. With the zeal of preachers guiding their flock to their lot, these young poets chastise the ills of worldly life at every word they utter. You join in the applause. Like it or not, their poetry hits home. Some of the poems are crafted so well you find yourself eager to read them. This kind of poetry would be in great demand here in Anizate. What a shame no print shop would agree to publish it. Later that night, you rejoin Sophia to discuss what you have seen. I've never heard anything like that before. I'm used to nursery rhymes and bawdy drinking songs, but this is something else. You cannot help but nod. The meaning was like a sermon, and the poet's words hit as hard and as true as the sacramental lash. And the audience, you recognize the look in their eyes. People look at Sophia just the same way every time she uses her magic. The thing is, they have no magic, but they can see the truth, and they talk about it so well you can't even stand it. Well, what can I say? I'm glad we went. Those kids could easily spark a riot with just a rhyme or two, but the question is, what are we supposed to do with them? It is a good question indeed, a difficult question. Those young poets are at their strongest when they speak from their heart. Trying to tame their ardor would be like playing with fire. You could recruit them, but it would not be easy to use them. If you cannot keep them in check, one day they will inevitably incite a rebellion. Maybe it would be wiser to nip this in the bud and put an end to their society right now. The secret chancellery could easily deal with them, but you could also report them to the prefecture. The gendarmes could take care of them in no time. Or maybe you could pass the case along to Father. It might do his career some good. Or perhaps... This all seems so new, so unknown. Is there any other way you could harness this strange new force of nature?
Shit. Publish. You know what John Milton would do with a print shop. Like it's not even funny at this point. Then again, look, recruit the poets is good, but then again, he wouldn't recruit anyone. Yeah, yeah,
With a
exactly.
smile, you assure Sophia you know a way to harness their youthful ardor. Oh, yeah? Okay, do it then. In spite of her lowly lot, your sister has been writing poems and stories ever since she was a little girl. As Gloria grew up, she easily found like minded friends, poetry inclined commoners like her. And you saw a number of her friends on stage tonight. Now that you think about it, you have expected Gloria to be there as well. Back home, you tell your sister how impressed you were by the Poetry Society. As the owner of your own print shop, maybe you could compile their works into a book of poetry. It would be the Empire's first book of poetry written by commoners. You can turn a handsome profit and make the poets famous all over Magra. Could Gloria tell her friends about this idea? Wow, I never thought you'd have the nerve to try something like this. Sure, I'll have a word with my friends. I'm sure many of them will be interested. But there is one thing. They'll never use their real names in the book. Otherwise, they'll get into trouble with the prefecture or the secret chancellery. Actually, are you sure this is a good idea? Can you really trust the people at your print shop? Maybe you should do all the work yourself at night. Though that way nobody will know, and you'll have to distribute the books in secret too. You shouldn't put your freedom at stake for the sake of coin. Not to worry, you assure Gloria. You have thought of everything. The poets' real names and the origin of the book will remain a secret. I can't tell you how happy this makes me. There are so many talented poets in Anizate, and they never even hoped their works would see print. They'll treasure your gift forever. Wow, we just started Antelope Hill Publishing. Does
I
not
don't know.
take.
This is Antelope Hill Publishing. This seems more like just Russian imperial samizdat by like communists. You know.
So true. I mean, yeah, Antelope Hill Publishing.
Well, no, Antelope Hill are not commies. They're like they're. Mm,
I am saying positionally, we are in the exact
no,
we are the exact same role as the Samizdat in imperialist Russia.
I don't know because back then they got support from other countries. And despite everything, I do not believe that Antelope Hill or Imperium Press are getting money from like Russia or something.
Imperium, no, I don't know. I'm not going
And
to.
because Antelope Hill publishes quite a lot of anti-Russian stuff too. They publish some pro-Russian, especially pro-Russian imperialism stuff. Well, not imperialism, but pro-imperial Russia kind of literature about the old Russia. Um, But I mean, no, I don't think so. Especially with their Twitter, with the fact that they're like anti modern Russia, even though they're a little bit more schizo, I'd say. As in, they don't have a strong political slant, not like Imperium Press, which are weird and wonderful in all the right ways.
Okay,
Colin?
I'm gonna cut an end to my opinion before I say anything else. It
Okay,
does not take you long.
well, 1 second. Another thing. Have you seen the recent videos that Scrump and Evelyn have been putting out about
No.
the? Okay, so despite everything, I was very intrigued by the first video, and so I watched that one, and then the second one. Apparently, so we are the core of like the right, in the West. And I don't think that the core is corrupted. Like, I don't think we have like serious Fed involvement or like serious like foreign affairs meddling. But the people around us, the shit like Toilet Paper USA and like the Jordan Peterson thing, and Ben Shapiro and all those people swirling around with these like conservative websites, like they are fucked. It's all funny hats. It's like crazy. They were just going through it, and it's just Israel, 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 and they were just all these people that work there have like fucking horrendous COVID opinions. are clamoring for more censorship constantly, and then some of them show up at shieldings, like first shieldings, people from the oh shit, what do you call it? Duck, and it's a mammal that lays eggs.
Platypus.
Platypus. I think it was platypus. No, it wasn't platypus. Fuck. I forgot. I forgot what the name is. But apparently they were at first Sildings, and they like published garbage from like Israeli Defense Force essentially. And you see all these people, all the James Lindsay's and whatever, and it's so weird. It's like, imagine if there's a in in Pentagon, underneath the ground, there's like a cadre of goblins that write all the foreign policies. And the goblins themselves, they don't have any like feds around them. But all the feds are like sitting around, in like they're sitting around in the basement, but they don't go with to meddle with the goblins. The goblins keep writing the fucking foreign policy and like predictions and all of the philosophy of foreign affairs. It's kind of, this is what the DR is in some way. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they haven't like put, or why does the government have so much trouble entering this space?
What space? The space of like the dissident right?
Yeah, like true dissident right, not like the cringe like James Lindsay stuff.
Yeah, not like vis-a-vis infiltrations and all that. Well, the thing is that they have problem infiltrating us very likely because they really have no vested interest in it. It doesn't really help them because we're not really doing anything. The only, what is it? I tell people this all the time, but it's like, look, the feds have been using the same playbook for 50 years. They do the same thing every single time. They what is it? They try to get a guy on the inside. Sorry, it's thundering outside, by the way. If you can hear that, there's a thunderstorm going on at my house right now. But they try to get a guy on the inside through very basic means because they don't know they don't know the idiosyncrasies, because quite frankly they don't care. They don't have the time to learn it. They know like some basic stuff, and then they get in through that, and once they do that, they try to catch people doing illegal stuff or push people into doing illegal stuff or start kicking, someone should do something, and then they do that, and then they get all your information, and then boom, they've met their quotas for the year. The dissident right we're basically just a bunch of salons. We're a bunch of dudes who sit there and think. We write long screeds, we talk to each other, we go to little events where we do very complicated intellectual speeches. And, as long as free speech is allowed in the United States, then we're fine. But, as soon as, and even then we have all of our, pass phrases, and we have all of our, our secret words, and we have our secret handshakes and all that, so that you can always kind of tell if someone is either an outsider or is in with it, and we all write our Substacks and all of that. But the thing is, Bobby, is that the federal government, they are worried about other things. They're worried about other things, and what we're talking about generally is the national security establishment. The national security establishment is a very, very influential part of the federal government, but it's not the only part of the federal government, right? It's competing for funding just like every other department is, and they kind of, in many ways, they just justify their own existence. They try to create a terrorist threat, so they keep getting more funding, so they keep getting jobs, so all this other stuff, and so it's like, if you're not outright doing terrorist stuff and they can't really easily make you do terrorist stuff, then they're just going to go after other groups, which like for example, Patriot Front. They're going to go after Patriot Front because Patriot Front walks around in uniforms. And I don't think Patriot Front is set up by feds. I think they're infiltrated, but I don't think they're that. I think they're just a separate organization with problems. That's why they went after Identity Europa. and its offshoots. That's why they went after,
Yeah, the shit that happened to Identity of Europa, insane.
well, and that's largely because Identity Europa made they just did activism. That was their problem. They did activism.
Well, they also had like summer camps for kids
Yeah.
that were pretty good, and like yeah, it sucks. And then they like put people in prison and stuff like that. And apparently the people in prison weren't even like in the organization and were just like supporters. Spooky, but yeah. Well,
Well,
you're going to do you have a PR department at the Old Glory Club?
um, I would not like. I would. I will avoid answering this question.
Oh, okay. Well,
But no,
because
the
yeah.
and the OGC, conceptually, the OGC is meant to. We have been learning from the mistakes of the past. All right, we have very much studied what previous iterations or attempts of the American right have been in the past, and we are simply deciding to put our best foot forward and to play the game as much as possible, and to and we've learned from what IE did wrong. We've learned from what the alt-right did wrong. We've learned from what the Tea Party people and even the GOP and the militia movement in the 90s, and going all the way back to the America Firsters. We've
John C. Calhoun.
Well, John C. Calhoun, his the reason he didn't win was because there was a civil war. that prevented the Calhoun compact theory of the Constitution from being adopted, was that there was a civil war. But yeah, no, like what we've basically realized is that there's a certain way you need to present yourself in the United States in the current time, in the current year, and we have just decided we are going to do that. We are going to do that with our best foot forward.
Yeah, I'm really glad something as cool is happening.
Yeah, I mean it's and the thing is we are an apolitical organization. The OGC, the OGC is not, we don't do politics. We are a fraternal organization. It's just a club. That's all it is. It's a legally registered club in the United States. And all we do is we just get together and do our little club activities, explicitly non-political, and then we go home. That's what we are. Anyway, Bobby, let's continue.
Let's continue.
It does not take you long to get started. The compilation entitled The Voice of Anizate is soon ready. You instruct Alita and the other Last Straw spies to sell the books in secret all over the city. Will do. When it comes to this job, young Alita is even more eager than ever. After all, many of the poems in the book are dedicated to the suffering of those who struggle against tyranny, including those who died in Eterna after the trial of the 50. You sell several hundred copies in a matter of days and receive many requests to print more. Popular, rare, and banned by the authorities, the book turns a significant profit. You keep working on new print runs and sell them easily, even at 3 times the price of a normal book. The poems are quoted all over town. They are declaimed by young people in the squares and on the streets. They are put to music and sung in taverns. They are written in paint and set on the walls. More and more young people recite them instead of prayers. I want to scream. Can't take this. It's so stupid.
Insufferable.
Okay.
But
we're ranking up in the world, Bobby.
Moderate means very good. Oh, finally, we're master manipulators now.
Well, we've always been. 2 powerful lords have been struggling for power in Magra for over 2 years now. The new overseer of the province, Gaius Tempest, cannot seem to rein in the obstinate spirit of Archduke Tarquinius Milanidas. I always make that mistake. Tarquinius Milanidas. Unwilling to accept that he is no longer the overseer of Magra, the Archduke still stubbornly continues to assert his right to rule the province. Most of the Magran gentry who swore allegiance to him generations ago remain loyal to him even now. Gaius Tempest has publicly demanded that the Archduke recognize the overseer's rule as legitimate. I am the voice and the will of Emperor Uther II in the province of Magra. All lands, deeds, and titles notwithstanding, Archduke Milanidas must obey his sovereign's will and heed his decree. I hereby extend to the Archduke an offer of peace. Should the Archduke cease his insubordination, his lands, deeds, and titles shall remain his own. The Archduke's response to the overseer was openly defiant. Since the days of yore, the land of Magra has belonged to the Milanidas dynasty. We are a part of the empire, and we are the empire's loyal servants. However, our dynasty will not stand for such intrusion upon our lawful rights and privileges. Never before has an archduke been stripped of his right to represent the emperor's rule in his own province. So do not forget, sir, overseer, that the highest noble families of Magra has sworn fealty to me alone. Neither the Archduke nor the Overseer will relent, but both are too powerful to be readily disposed of. The bad blood between the two Archnians has festered for too long, and the common people have begun to pay the price for their strife. Stripped of the Overseer's tax privileges, the Archduke Milanidas has decided to impose his own levy upon the citizens and villagers of Magra. The commoners are now forced to pay taxes twice, first to the Overseer and then to the Archduke.
Ridiculous.
This double burden is too much for the common people of Magra to bear. Many have refused the second tax outright as a lawless measure, but the Imperial Legion led by young Dorius Otten is ruthless. Eagerly and without mercy, the Legion soldiers collect the Archduke's due in cities and villages alike.
That's ridiculous. Has that ever happened in, like, American history?
Well, this is what the whole idea of, I don't know officially, this is the idea of paying taxes to your state and then the federal government and then your locality. But I don't know if there's ever been dueling authorities. I'm sure there has been an example where, people were imposing two different taxes. I guess, for example, Huey Long in Louisiana, who was the only really ever dictator of a state.
Huey Long
imposed a tax on, I guess, federal employees so that a certain chunk of their salary outside of their tax income went into Huey Long's political machine, and maybe that was recompensed by loyalty appointments, but I don't know if that's necessarily the same. I know
Why didn't he win?
Why did he win?
Yeah, why didn't he win?
Oh, why didn't he win?
Yeah.
Which one? The presidential election of 32?
The presidential election, exactly.
Well, I mean, because he was an up-and-coming young politician. He was going up against a lot more established political figures like FDR, and I forget who the Republican candidate that year was. I think it was Hoover, actually. FDR and Hoover and stuff like that. He was, he lost out the Democratic bid to FDR, who was, but if he hadn't have been killed in 34. No, it was 34 or 35 he was killed. I think it was 35. But if he hadn't have been killed, it's very likely he would have, split the Democratic ticket much the same way that Teddy and Taft split the Republicans back in the election of 1912. And that's why a lot of theories come forth that, FDR had Huey Long killed. But then again, it might have just been like Wallace Johnson sort of thing where it would have been like, there's no chance Huey Long would have won, but he would have taken enough deep South states to split the solid South, which usually votes in one direction. Up until now, it's starting to split. Nixon-Wallace coalition is starting to break down because Georgia and very likely North Carolina are going to start consistently voting Democrat instead of Republican, which means that the solid South as a strategy is probably not going to continue, which may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing. I personally don't know. But yeah, anyway, Bobby. But I do know in the instance of organized crime in like New York City with the mafias, you would pay a sort of racketeering price. Like they'd be like, hey, we gotta.
Exactly. Well done.
Yeah.
Mafia.
So not only were you paying taxes to the federal government, you were also paying quote unquote taxes to the local Don or whomever because, they were another power structure, and so that's why communities with the mafia tended to be somewhat impoverished. and tended to
I-
stay that way.
Is there mafia in America right now? Like,
Oh yeah. What do you think the
could you say that the
cartels
federal
are?
government is in a civil war with the mafia, or are they like cooperating?
Well, the thing is, though, is the mafia still exists in the United States, but like it's just like it's kind of a non-entity anymore. Its influence back in the mid 20th century was massive, especially in the 70s, when the federal government's law and order, especially in cities, basically collapsed. That's why mafia started springing up, but it's not really a thing anymore. I mean, yeah, you've got various organized crime outfits with their own shadow economic operations, but the big one now is the cartels. Everyone's worried about the cartels. And that's why people are saying we need to go in.
Is that an invasion or a civil war?
What do you mean an invasion or a civil war?
Well, because how to say it? It's not a war with mafia or a war against mafia. It's not a war against mafia. It's like, let's go down to the basics. You know, is it like, what's it? Is it a war with another power structure? And if it is it an internal threat or an external threat, like the cartels?
I mean, usually the internal threat has external backing or external ties. Like, you know, the Sicilian mob had ties to Sicily all the way into the sort of last days of it, you know.
Are you talking the federal government of Italy was helping the Sicilian mob in America?
I'm not saying the federal government was, but I am saying that the Sicilian mob had a sort of base in Sicily and southern Italy as well. You know, it's kind of like the battle between, you know, it's not so much a fight between two competing power structures. I mean, it kind of is. It's more of like, I'm trying to find a good metaphor to explain it. It would be kind of like, the principle of a secondary or a high school, you know, going after a sort of bully gang. You know, like in theory, they're under their authority, but like, you know, in reality, de facto, they don't really play by the rules. And so it's kind of like it's a failure of the efficiency of justice or the efficiency of law and order that brings these people about. And the best way really to fight them is to actually kind of make them unnecessary. The best way to fight them is to simply stabilize your country. And because the reason these mafias, Bobby, tend to be successful is that they supply a market deficit, which is law and order of some kind. Even if it is a much more brutal kind of law and order, people will pick brutal law and order over anarchy or instability. And so the best way to get rid of organized crime is just to stabilize your country, is to end the sources of instability, and then the mafias become redundant.
Maybe sometimes you gotta join the mafia, like absorb it, like modernity does with everything.
Oh yeah, that's another way.
You know?
That's another way and that's kind of, one might argue that that's kind of why the world is becoming more feudalistic, is because, you know, any mafia can become a legitimate government institution with, you know, the right decision, and usually governments will actually choose that because it means they have to do less work.
Yeah, you know, it's like in Japan, the Yakuza are not just an institution, they are a fashion symbol.
Yeah, you know, and it's probably like, you know, it is probably two different power structures competing, because the mafia and any organized crime outfit is directly challenging the monopoly on violence that is the state / government of any nation or polity. But the thing is if the mafia too openly defies that, then yeah, the state comes after them and absolutely obliterates them usually. And it, you know, for example, the torture and murder of DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena, in, I think it was the 70s. It was the Sinaloa cartel that caught him. He was a DEA agent who infiltrated the Sinaloa cartel was learning, because this was back when the first, the marijuana craze was happening in the United States in the beginning of the war on drugs. And so once Camarena was caught and he was tortured to death, and the cartels, the thing is they thought that the United States wouldn't care, but the problem is that they went after a badge wearing federal agent, and once they crossed that line, the U.S. government basically did what we always do, is that you fuck with one of our guys, we will absolutely murder you. We will hunt you down. And that's what happened. That's what happened. Like, after the murder of Kiki Camarena, the U.S. just, like, took off the gloves and just eviscerated the leadership of the Sinaloa cartel. But
then they replaced the Sinaloa cartel.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, because all they really did was it was a massive display of, hey, don't screw with our guys, and the cartels learned, don't screw with federal agents, because it'll bring on more consequences than it's worth.
Because then the federal agents will stop ferrying your parents to America.
Well, I mean, and that's a whole other thing. I mean, this is the problem. Like, it's, for example, U.S. Army 7th Group is a special forces group, and all the special forces groups, the Green Berets is what I'm talking about. They're the only actual unit of JSOC that is actually called special forces. People use the term special forces to apply to things like Navy SEALs when they're a whole different entity. U.S. Army Special Forces, or SF as they're called, the Green Berets, are regionalized. They're broken down into different regional groups that have different regional knowledge. And so 7th Group is based in Southcom, which is South America. And they all speak Spanish or Portuguese and all that. And usually their tours of duty are in places like Colombia, where a lot of the cartels are. Mexico is considered a part of Northcom. It's a separate entity. We deal with it separately from the rest of the Latin American countries. And there's this big thing amongst 7th Group guys, is that once you retire from the Army, you just get hired on by a cartel, and you either run security or operations with the cartel, and the U.S. Army will use you as an asset to kind of negotiate or deal with the cartels.
That's whack.
It is whack. It is whack, and that's because, basically the drug war is much like how the European nobles fought the 100 Years' War. It was kind of a game to them. Whenever aristocrats were captured, they'd be treated very well and all this other stuff. Basically, it's something that the and this is my problem with the national security establishment of the United States, is that they actually have more in common with the people they are quote-unquote hunting, or the terrorists they're quote-unquote looking for, and all of that. They have more in common with that than they do with the people that they're doing it on behalf of. And so if people wanted the problem to be solved, it would be solved. It's simple as that. But the thing is that there's a whole industry with whole, fields of study, whole majors, all this other stuff to entire lifetimes that can be spent climbing the ladder, getting a really high paying job with really good funding. And no one wants to end that. They want to keep that going forever. And, and that's why things like the drug war just do not get solved. And all the while, the people, who aren't doing this in the first place, well, their sons and daughters are dying in middle America from overdosing on fentanyl brought in by the cartels, paid for by China, sort of allowed by the federal government for ill or for fair or foul means. And, it just kind of stratifies. It's kind of like how, the 100 Years' War, all the peasants were freaking slaughtering each other on the field, and the nobles were kind of yucking it up in the campfires afterward, pretending to be Arthurian knights and whatever it was they were doing. Once again, Paul Anglo-Marxist allegations confirmed. But like,
again, how did we come here? How did we arrive to the 100-year war?
I mean, I don't know, man. You just get me talking, and I just relate.
The Anglos again.
I relate one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing.
Good. It's wonderful. It's fascinating.
Mr. Bobby, I'm gonna go grab another cup of coffee. I will be right back. We're exactly an hour in. We're halfway in. and we've gotten through one single scene.
Oh, it's great.
One scene.
Hey, Sneedsters. It's like 4 of you, or 3. I guess I'm 1.
Mr. Bobby. All right. So we need to keep going.
Okay.
A gift for the family. This last year has been an ordeal for your family. The pains taken to be ennobled by the sword, the close attention of the city aristocracy, the squabbles between Stefan and Gloria. Tonight your preoccupied father has gathered the entire family around a table in the backyard. The sun is almost set and there is a soft breeze, but instead of a meal in the open air, you're going to attend a family meeting. In the middle of the table, you see an open gilded box. It is full of jewels. Archduke Milanidas himself has bestowed this gift upon us. It is a surprise indeed. I thought you all had a right to know. The father unfolds a letter lying beside the box. Sir Robert Bronte, I bestow this precious box upon you and your family as a symbol of the care with which I treat the people of my province. Pray accept this gift and remember with whom the loyalty of the true nobles of Magra lies. Archduke of Magra, Tarquinius of the Milanidas. The family stares in amazement at the jewels sparkling in the last rays of sunshine. It's worth quite a fortune, but the Archduke is fully aware that I am on the side of Prefect El Borne and the Overseer Gaius Tempest. Could he really expect our loyalty to be bought so brazenly? On the other hand, the Archduke is not demanding of us, and our family has borne a lot of expenses recently. Father, no one is forcing you to side with Milanidas. Who are we in comparison to the Archduke anyway? We must not anger him by refusing his gift. The jewels are certainly welcome. They are worthy of being shared with the best families of Anizate. They will pave our way to the nobility of the sword. Mother shakes her head glumly. Oh, Robert, I have a feeling this gift bodes ill. It may be an impertinence on my part, but I do not want our family to be indebted to the Archduke. Certainly not. Accepting gifts from Milanidas. He's infamous for oppressing the commoners and robbing villages blind with his taxes. This isn't your decision, Gloria. It's a matter of our family's honor and reputation. Please don't start bickering again. Let Paul say what he thinks we should do with this gift. You are the center of attention now. Your vote will be the deciding factor. Nope. Can't do it. Nope.
Wow,
Can't do it.
nothing. Whack.
But we'll do this.
Reason.
You insist that the
Minus
Archduke's
unity.
jewels should not be declined, but they must not be given away either. Your family treasury needs an infusion of cash. The family's wealth is as important in the eyes of society as noble reputation. I don't know, Paul. Money comes and goes, but our family's honor is here to stay. You object, reminding him that in your own lifetime the family has already fallen out of favor and risen again. For the nobles, a family's reputation is just another form of currency. Is there truly nothing more important than money and reputation? Archduke Milanidas is a villain like no other. Our family ought to stay away from him. Simmer down, Gloria. I agree with Paul. Let it be so. I'll send a note to the Archduke expressing our humblest gratitude, but I'll also point out that I don't mean to change sides. I still serve my prefect and my overseer. In the meantime, Paul will see to the family coffers. You promptly take the precious box and go inside to start taking an inventory of the jewels. Mother, Gloria, and Nathan follow you with forlorn looks. You sell the jewels and easily amass a considerable sum. Your efforts have now ensured that any family treasury will not run short anytime soon.
We're still at peace with unity, though.
Yeah,
so
the
it's fine.
family's still fine, and plus we're building up that wealth. I don't know if we can get the Family of Means achievement from 10 wealth, unless we get some more chances with the print shop. You and Sophia have accomplished a lot over the past year. The last straw now consists of half a dozen cells that know nothing about one another. You have several informers gathering rumors and news. Many citizens support your cause and are ready to help. The ranks of the underground society include honest rebels eager to bring the empire down, as well as thieves and thugs willing to break any law as long as they get paid. As more and more people join your insurgency, rumors begin to spread throughout the city. It will soon become impossible to conceal your existence. The last straw desperately needs a public figurehead, someone to act as the patron of your secret society, someone who can justify your existence to the authorities. You choose Mayor Egmont. He has earned a fortune and made a name for himself thanks to his silver mines, and now he is the leader of the Magrin Lesson Quorum. Rumor has it, he is eager to get in touch with someone from the underground. If there was ever a time to meet, it is now. Fortunately, you know people who know people, and soon enough you arrange a meeting. An empty warehouse, late at night. All the workers have gone home. A dim lamp is the only source of light in the spacious facility. The two of you are alone here, free from prying eyes. Up close, Egmont turns out to be a broad-shouldered, middle-aged man in a pricey frock coat. He wears no jewelry, but his beard and mustache are well kempt. Only the gray hair at his temples betrays his age. He offers you a warm, rough hand. It is the calloused hand of a man who has had to work all his life. You shake it readily. The industrialist offers you a seat at a nearby table. Truth be told, young man, I know your family quite well. I had the honor to be introduced to your grandfather back in the day. Unfortunately, Sir Gregor Bronte wasn't exactly delighted to meet me. But your father, he's a staunch supporter of Elborne. We've often seen eye to eye, he and I. Let's see if you and I can find some common ground, too. I'll be frank with you. I know quite a bit about what you're up to here in Anizate. You've built yourself a functioning underground society, and you've done it very quickly, all without getting caught. I'd say you got an eye for business. But tell me, why are you doing all this? What's your goal? What are you trying to achieve? Please be sincere with me. I'm the last man who wants to see you reported to the Secret Chancellor. You were prepared for this question. Egmont listens carefully as you give him a short speech on the coming rebellion against the Empire, first in Anizate, then in Magra. When you are done, the industrialist lets out a sigh. Ambitious, determined, but utterly senseless. Let's say you do manage to foment an uprising against the Archduke, against the Overseer, even the Emperor himself. Well, what then? What are your demands? Who do you want to listen to then? If you ever negotiate or make a deal, then with whom will you do it? What about your terms? And what will your relationship with the Empire be like if your revolt succeeds? So far, Paul, I've heard no answers to these questions. To be honest, I'm quite confident you don't have any answers, but fortunately for you, I do. There's also one self-evident fact that I'd like to bring to your attention. Whenever someone discusses authority or power within the Empire, there's one thing that never seems to raise any doubt. Prefects and commanders, magistrates and overseers, they're always nobles. Any position of power only for nobles. Landowners, always nobles. Who rules over Anizate? Overseer Tempest or Archduke Milanidas? No one can say for sure these days. Either way, no matter who they are, nobles rule the city. But a city...
My God, this is Karl Marx.
But a city isn't a castle or a fortress. A city is more than the sum total of its walls and buildings. A city is its people, the commoners who work and trade and live there. There always have been and always will be more of us than the nobles. We are this city, Bronte.
The People's History of Anizate.
Well...
Have you read that book, actually?
The People's History of what?
Of America.
Is that Howard Zinn?
I think so, yeah.
I have never once read Zinn in my entire life, mostly because he can go kill himself, but...
Yeah, he's bad.
The thing is, though...
Like, yeah.
The thing is, though, is that, like, you know, this is smacking more of, like, the idea of an imperial free city to me that happened in the Middle Ages. You know, the Hansa, people don't talk about that the Hansa was a federal republic. Like, hundreds of... And really, the Hansa is what the United States modeled a lot of its stuff off of. You know, the one country all the founding fathers of America were really focused on and were really interested in was actually Denmark. You know... all of the founding fathers really were intrigued by Denmark for some reason. And that's largely because Denmark was an association of a lot of free towns, free cities that were kind of quasi-part of the Hansa, not really. They were kind of the Hansa's main competitors centered around the Copenhagen Sound tolls, which was the biggest thorn in the side of the Hansa. But over time, the Danish monarchy quietly, especially after the Kalmar Union sort of collapsed, the Danish monarchy kind of took this absolutist control over the country of Denmark and kind of ended this very sophisticated, complex medieval system, which survived in, say, somewhere like, I don't freaking know, England. You know, England maintained its somewhat sophisticated system of medieval, you know, free cities and, you know, ports having specific rights and all this other stuff. Which was then transferred over to the United States because the United States functions essentially like the Holy Roman Empire. That's what federalism is. Federalism is basically the Holy Roman Empire. There's a federal government that has federal land, but for the most part, outside of that, it's just a collection of localities, states, and there's special governing area. For example, within Tennessee, there are several special governing areas of Tennessee. There's the 3 grand divisions. There's the East Tennessee, which is centered around, Tennessee is like 3 capitals basically, of its 3 governing divisions, even though the state has 1 capital. But, you know, East Tennessee is centered around Knoxville, Middle Tennessee is centered around Nashville, and West Tennessee is centered around Memphis. And they have 3 different general areas and 3 different ways of doing things, you know. And that's only the official divisions. There's all sorts of unofficial divisions, which kind of just, you know, take for example, in North Carolina, there's the Granville district, which is basically the state is cut in half, and the Granville district is, I think, the northern part of the state. That has a whole different legal tradition just because some English noble, Lord Carteret, would not sell his land back to King Charles, you know, during the matter of fact, Bobby, you asked me earlier if there was an example in American history where people paid 2 taxes, and I have just remembered one I can give you. All right. So this was before America, but North Carolina is one of the 13 original colonies, and it was originally set up as a, you know, basically 8 lords privately owned land in North Carolina. It was granted to them by Charles II for loyalty during the Restoration period, all right? But eventually, Charles II, I think, eventually bought all the land back from them to set up the Crown Colony, or the Royal Colony of North Carolina. 7 of the 8 did, except for one, Lord Carteret, who was like the Earl of Granville or something like that. And so the part of North Carolina that he maintained ownership of is called the Granville District. And during, you know, in the years, and this was all around like the early 1700s, or like late 1600s, early 1700s. And so all the way, pretty much the entire century, the entire 18th century up to the Revolution, you know, you had people who were living in the Granville District who were confused as to whether they had to pay taxes to the Carterets, Lord Carteret, and the royal government, the crown government of North Carolina, and they were being double taxed because there was this
some of them did not pay taxes.
Yeah, you know, and that's obviously that's what happens when you have to pay taxes to 2 different entities. You'll pay taxes to neither, you know. And that's why, you know, the Granville District, you can still see differences today. You know, different legal precedents, different codes. And even though it's all under the government of North Carolina now, you know, that happens in the United States. Anyway, Bobby, I don't mean to talk your ear off about it, but I just remembered that question.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and this is when I tell people America is the most medieval country on earth, and they kind of look at me like, what the hell are you talking about? And I say, no, just look at its government. Like, look at my home state of Virginia. Virginia is the only state in the United States that has free cities. You know, in every other state in the United States, all of the cities are a part of the surrounding county. But in Virginia, you'll have free cities in the middle of counties. You know, cities that have like no business being a free city, like frickin' Martinsville has no business being a free city as compared to somewhere like Chicago. But one thing Martinsville has.
What does being a free city entail?
Well, so, you know, if you in Virginia, that means that you're your own locality and you report to no one above you except for the state government of Virginia. If, for example, you take the city of Chicago, the city of Chicago is, you know, it stretches outside of Cook County, but the center is generally contained within Cook County. All right. And it is the city government of Chicago is under the jurisdiction of Cook County. All right. And then Cook County then reports to the state of Illinois. In Virginia, it's separated. For example, the city of Richmond has no higher authority above it between it and the governor. It is just the city and then the governor, right? In other states, in every other state, it is city, county, governor. You know, and that's Virginia is very much governed like England was, and England is very much governed like how people imagine the Holy Roman Empire to be governed. You know, all sorts of competing privileges and, different jurisdictions and different exceptions. And it is a very sophisticated, complex, medieval way of governing. And that's why I love America, and I'm never going to leave America, because every other country on the planet is extremely modern.
You're right. But
anyway,
maybe it's modern people versus modern organization.
In this instance, I'm only really talking about government institutions and the way things are done. But
it's
let's
very interesting.
Yeah, let's get back to
okay.
Mayor.
Let's go ahead. Yeah.
Real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
What's happening?
This is supposed to be an O.
Oh, whoops. Yeah, but then again, isn't mayor like literally the same as mayor? No.
Oh, no, he's not the mayor. No, that's just his first name. Never mind. Sorry, for some example.
That's how it starts,
Yeah, for some reason I thought that he was the mayor, but no, actually this is just his first name.
He's named for the role.
Yeah, he's just like an MP basically. He's not a mayor. You've never been to a meeting of the Lesser Quorum, have you? I won't bore you with the details. Let me put it this way. It's the only place where the common estate has the same rights as the nobles. Sure enough, there's arguing, there's contention, there's a fight every time we meet, but as we argue, as we contradict each other, we find a new way. One that takes everybody's interests into account. But unfortunately, right now, the Lesser Quorum only has the authority to discuss issues related to taxation in the province. But if you and I come to an agreement, this will change. I've spent most of my life making the idea of the Quorum a reality, and I swear to you on my life that it works. This is the only way to bring something new to the Empire, by giving the commoners and the nobles the same power. Egmont is shouting now, his eyes shining with excitement. He is utterly engrossed in his idea, and you feel he actually believes what he says. And here in Magra, we have the chance. We had no way to do it in the past, back when Archduke Milanidas was in charge, but now Gaius Tempus represents the Empire's authority in Magra. Tempus still can't find a way to share power with Milanidas. He needs all the support he can get, and you and I, we can give him that support. And Paul, are you aware of how the Gaius Tempus ended up becoming the overseer of Magra? He was too progressive for the capital and his fellow Archnians. He went too far in his attempts to make nobles and commoners equal under imperial law. He was exiled to Magra for his troubles. And yet Gaius Tempus has never abandoned the idea of making the estates equal. He was the one who supported the creation of the Lesser Quorum. He is well disposed towards the lowly estate and tends to listen to reason. We can make him our ally, and your uprising could be the deciding factor. If we can manage to seize control of the city and hang on to it, if we can prove we're able to run Anizate, if the citizens show us their support, then we'll have a lot to offer the overseer. In return for making Anizate a free city, a city-state, if you will, see, he's trying to do the Hansa thing, governed by the Lesser Quorum.
We finally need the sensible center.
Sensible centrism for the win. Governed by the Lesser Quorum, will recognize Gaius Tempus' authority in Magra and support him in his power struggle against the Archduke. If nobles and commoners come to govern a city together, in just a few short years, it will become obvious to the entire empire how advantageous this arrangement is, and then old traditions will have no choice but to step aside. I understand that things like this take time, but as you prepare for the revolt, I'll support your underground movement with all the power and funding at my disposal, as long as you say you'll walk towards this future with me. Mayor Egmont lets out an exhausted sigh. Delivering such a fervent speech is no easy task for a man his age. After a moment of quiet, you agree. Yes, you say, this is a future worth fighting for. The last straw will support Egmont's plan. You promise to spread his vision of the free city of Anizat, first among the rebels, then through the city, starting immediately. You shake hands. Once the conversation is over, you leave the warehouse and walk back through the dark streets of Anizate. You have made a promise, but what are you actually going to do? There is a kernel of truth in Mayor Egmont's words. The aged industrialist plan could actually work. This is no longer just a pointless revolt doomed to fail. Dangerous thoughts begin running through your mind. Would it be best to abandon the idea of the free city of Anizat and report the meeting to Sir Felipe?
I don't know. I like Felipe, but I mean, I like his power, but like Mayor Eggman, oh, I don't know what he would do. I mean, do you remember the thing with the guards, where like we had to defend our brother, but we went and called the guards
Yeah.
instead of that? I don't know. What would be the John Milton's thing? And wealth is good too. And I mean, could he keep a secret?
Well,
What were the secrets
John
that John
Milton.
Milton kept?
John Milton was a parliamentarian. One might say that the mayor is also a parliamentarian.
Does the mayor have anything that? It's interesting. Parliamentarian. How did you even become a parliamentarian?
I don't know. He read the Bible and he was a Calvinist Puritan. And that, if you're a Calvinist Puritan, you're tended to predispose. That tradition predisposes you to a dislike of any sort of monarchy whatsoever. This is like, I was talking about the English right. The English right's only win condition, because it is inherently Christian. The English right's win condition is just, the second coming. That's it. The whole telos, the political economy of the English right, is govern yourself as best you can until the second coming. Which, unfortunately, because I am not unfortunately, but fortunately because I'm a Christian, I have to be an English right winger, because that means being on the English left kind of goes against my faith. And so the English left is that we need to make the world better, make heaven on earth. The English right is like, we need to survive until heaven comes back to earth. And
Do you
that's
think that what did the founders think about the second coming? Like, did they think that it had already happened?
no.
Like, was America the second coming?
So let me pull up for you. So I'm actually really glad a friend of mine found this. I was looking for this chart before. I have this chart of the ethnic and religious, the ethnic origins and religious confessions of every single one of the founding fathers. All right. And so I'm not going to tell you about what their ethnic origins is, but I will give you an interesting. Hey, so Bobby, what do you think that? So I will read you all of the ethnic origins of all of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Are you ready?
Let's hope there aren't any Russians in there.
So 45 were English. That's the number one ethnicity. 45 of the founding fathers were English. All right. 9 were Scottish. 6 were Scottish from Scotland, and 3 were Ulster Scots, or the Scots-Irish. 5 were Welsh. 4 were Dutch. That's the New York settlement. 2 were Irish from Ireland. 2, and get this, were Italian.
Were what again?
Italian.
Italian. Oh, mamma mia.
Caesar Rodney from Delaware had Italian ancestry, and William Paca from Maryland. Yeah, and William Paca from Maryland had Italian ancestry. And finally, the last one, and the one that will be like, you're like, wait, what? One Finn.
One Finn?
One Finn.
What? Did Lenin time travel?
John Morton of Pennsylvania was Finnish.
Oh, that's whack.
Yeah.
Was he like Asian Finnish? Did he have like yellow skin, or was he like more of a Scandinavian?
No, he was more Scandinavian. He was I mean, the thing is that when Sweden colonized South Jersey and Delaware into New Sweden, they had a small little colony there. That's how John Morton's family ended up there. And his father and mother were both of Finnish extraction. And so he was also, interestingly, John Morton was the first signer of the Declaration to die.
Did he speak Finnish?
No, he was totally anglicized, but he was entirely genetically Finnish, more or less.
Perkele.
But to answer your question more directly, what did the founders what did the founders think of the second coming? Well, only 5 of them were deists. Only 5 of them were like sort of enlightenment rational atheists, essentially. 1 was Unitarian, which means they totally reject the Trinity. The rest were some kind of Trinitarian Christian. There was 1 Baptist, 1 Methodist, 1... Although, actually, there was another Universalist. So 7 of the founders, 1 Universalist, 1 Unitarian, and 5 deists who believed... I think the Universalist was Ben Franklin, but who just weren't like Christian. They weren't Trinitarian Christians. So 7 maybe just didn't even believe in Christianity at all. 1 was a Baptist, 1 was a Methodist, 1 was a Puritan, 4 were Catholic. Most famously, Charles Carroll of Carrollton of Maryland, who is the richest man in the colonies. 3 were Lutheran, 9 were Quakers, which I think is still Trinitarian. They're just very weird. 23 were Presbyterian, which is Scottish Calvinists. 27 were just generic Calvinists. And then the supermajority at 76 were Episcopal.
Episcopal. Ooh.
Which is
that
just
Protestant still?
It's the American version of Anglican.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Wait, what does that mean?
You don't know about the Anglican Church?
No. I know what the Anglican Church is, but you mean they think that the real church is in England?
Well, they were
English.
They were the American sort of diocese of the English Church.
Wow.
Yeah, and the Episcopal.
Wait. So for them, the head of the church is the king, right?
It's the Archbishop of Canterbury. Yeah, and that's why the Episcopal Church split off from the Anglican Church, because they don't recognize the king as the head of state, but they do recognize the Archbishop of Canterbury as the head.
That's fascinating.
It is.
I didn't know that.
And the Episcopals have always been, and Episcopals were Trinitarian Christians. At one point, were Trinitarian. Structurally, actually, the Episcopal Church is the most similar to the Eastern Orthodox Church, because it's really just like a bishop system. The priests are all ordained, but they're like, they don't have to be celibate. They're just like and there's like the Archbishop of Canterbury is just like really the first among equals. It's not like the Catholic Church, which is strictly hierarchical. But yeah, they were Trinitarian Christians. They just weren't very like serious in their theology. They were like the Via Media. But
the Via Media, the what?
The Via
Via
Media.
Media?
The middle way.
Oh, okay, got it.
The middle way of high church versus low church.
Kind of interesting how they were all of Christian creeds, obviously, but very discordant.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Christian creeds.
Well, and that's why, when you say America, a lot of people ask me what America is. Right now, my current heuristic I give them is America is a club. Certain people are given admission to the club after a long enough time. But, the older your club member is, the more prestigious or the more right and prestige you have to say in the club. So that's why when people talk about founding stock or heritage Americans, there's no real one ethnicity that you can kind of point to. The English generally are the largest, at least if you look at the upper class, but the Scots-Irish and the Scottish have been here just as long. Same with the Welsh, and the Irish too. Any of the British Isles peoples are usually considered first. All right. If you can trace your family back far enough. And then after that, you've got like the Dutch, who are kind of just totally subsumed. And then you've got like the 48er Germans who all came over after the revolutions of 1848 and generally settled the Midwest, and the Scandinavians that settled Minnesota. And America has one of the largest colonies of Finns in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. They're called Yoopers.
Of Finns?
Yeah. America has America has a shadow country, a shadow second country of every other country on Earth, every European country. Yeah, the Finns are in the Upper Peninsula. They've got Norwegians in Minnesota as well as Swedes.
Russians in Brighton Beach.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you know, you said it, not me. But there were Czech.
Where else?
There were
Where else do the Russians live?
the Russians also settled the Great Plains in the Midwest quite a bit. Moscow, Idaho is an example.
There's also Alaska, right?
Yeah, Alaska too. Alaska would be the most marked place you'd see their influence. A little bit of the Pacific Northwest, not so much. But you've got, if you go down to Texas, you have the Texas Germans who are very famous around New Braunfels and Fredericksburg, and they still speak German. It's dying because those are booming suburbs of Austin, but you still find German speakers. You'll find a blue-eyed. If you go to a taco restaurant down there, you will find blue-eyed Mexicans serving you tacos while speaking German. There's also there were a lot of Czech settlements in Texas. They were called the Czechsons. There were Polish settlements in Texas. A lot of Balkans ended up in Texas, as well as in New Orleans. New Orleans had basically the entire Catholic world living in the city. You know, there's the story. I don't know if I've told this story on this stream before, but there was the unit of 200, you know, Serbians, Croatians, and Bosnians who fought in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. You know, there was, and so that's the thing, Bobby. Like, when people talk about America, like, if you go to America, America has had these like ethnic parallel communities pretty much since it was founded. You know, there's the Cape Fear Highlanders, which is the only instance of mass Highland settlement in the United States, which is in southern North Carolina. You've got, you know, obviously you've got the hell. You had a whole. Go ahead.
You got the projects.
Well, I mean, you know, that's their own thing. But, you know, Bobby, there was a whole like parallel ethnos of Hussites that settled in the United States, of Czech Hussites in the early days of the church. That was the Moravians, who were in the back country, you know. And so that's the thing.
This is a recipe for eternal ethnic strife.
And we like it that way, damn it.
Well, did you see that in the chat? Saddam Hussein wrote, "Glad the information could be of use, Mr. Fahrenheit." Well, hey, concerned citizen, look at this. In your report to Philippe, you claimed that Mayor Egmont was more careful than you expected, and your attempts to come to an agreement with him were unsuccessful. You claim that the industrialist is putting money into the struggle for communist rights, but cleverly disguises it as charity.
I'll let you read.
In the end of the report, you assure Philippe that you will find a way for the secret chancellery to connect Egmont's actions to underground activities and the Bruin plot on revolt. However, you cannot do it right now. You expect Philippe to reply with a furious letter, but as the days go by, you do not receive a single word from the secret chancellery advisor. The silence feels more menacing than any threat. John Milton on thin ice. Go ahead.
Indeed.
But we're wealthy, so that's good.
Okay.
Go ahead. I think you should read.
Yeah, I will. Just give me one moment.
Okay. Well, then I'll read this page, and you'll read the next one. An old friend. Night is falling over Anizale. The stifling heat gives way to an eagerly anticipated freshness. After a day of work, you stroll home at a leisurely pace. You turn down a side street that you have known since you were a little boy. It is as if your legs are acting of their own accord, bringing you to the place of their childhood play, the remnants of the wooden fort. So much has changed since the days when you used to play here with your little friends.
Engrossed in your memories, at first you fail to notice that you are not alone here. A tall figure in the uniform of a Legion officer approaches you. You see unruly brown hair and a twinkle in his eye. It is Tomas. Now that's a surprise. Hi, Bronte. Fancy running into you at the moment I'm back in town. Your childhood friend puts his arms around you. Our battalion got transferred here recently. We're under the command of the Magra Legion now. I'm keeping the peace and maintaining order in my very own province. Well, why don't we catch up? Let me buy you dinner. We'll have a little chat. Remember the old days. Thomas cuts himself short. You suddenly notice how much older he looks. His face has become sharper and rougher. His eyes are filled with exhaustion rather than their usual mischievous sparkle. I should warn you though, Paul, I ain't the best company nowadays. I've managed to get myself some powerful enemies already. I'm a friend who could taint your good name, so if you'd rather not be seen with me, well, I understand. The smile on his face starts to fade. What will we do?
Okay.
I know what Milton would do.
What would he do? Would he just walk away? Would he just like, whoops, who the fuck are you? Or would he eat? Oh, what did Milton eat? Like,
Well,
what was his favorite food?
I don't know.
About that? Huh. Kind of cool. It'd be cool to ask like a scholar about like favorite foods of old. Like, did he even like food? Maybe he just ate to eat.
Yeah, I
Old
don't know.
brew.
I don't know what kind of food Milton did eat. But I know that he will. Milton doesn't really care about his reputation.
Okay. True. True. In fact, we don't have any reputation, so it doesn't matter.
You give Tomas your hand. You shake hands firmly. So you haven't forgotten your old friend Bronte. That's the way it ought to be. Well, come on then. You go to a tavern, reminiscing about your childhood antics on these very streets along the way. You choose a table in the far corner of the tavern. Tomas orders a bottle of good wine and some food. You talk about your latest case, about your first years back in Anizate. You share family news, your quest to become nobles of the sword, the quarrels between your elder brother and sister, your mother's health. Tomas nods with concern. Sounds like you've had some tough times. Your family has always been different. Mine, on the other hand, is the same as it ever was. My pa is always in his workshop and my ma is always doing chores. But look at me, I came home a service-class nobleman, although it doesn't bring me much joy anymore. Tomas is suddenly grim. You ask your old friend to share his troubles with you. He quickly glances around the room and lowers his voice. Well, I'm a captain in the Magran Legion now, and who's our commander? His Excellency Dorius Otten. That's right, I serve under the same Archnean whose toes I stepped on back in Eterna, and you better believe he remembers me. I'm afraid things are going to end real bad. But hey, I'll figure it out somehow. Don't trouble yourself over it. Apart from that, well, it's the usual service. We impose order in uppity towns and villages, protect the province, that sort of thing. And we run drills all day long, obviously. If only you knew how sick I am of them barracks, Paul. I've thought about starting a family. My ma keeps telling me to find a nice girl to marry. She says it's high time I got hitched. It is completely dark and you are still talking. Finally, Tomas remembers that his parents are waiting for him. You get up from the table, leaving some dirty dishes and quite a few empty bottles behind. On your way out, you catch a glimpse of a nondescript figure following you to the door. As you walk alongside Tomas through your home neighborhood, you keep glancing over your shoulder, but the shadow that was following you has disappeared. You reach your street and stop for a while in the semi-darkness before your family homes, just as you used to all those years ago. Bye, Bronte. I hardly ever come to Anizate these days. Our battalion is always on the march all over the province, but twins willing we'll see each other again real soon. You advise his friend to safeguard his every life. Alright. Hey, Bobby, I hate to do this to you, but I gotta cut this short. Something did come up. So we'll end it here at the gunpowder plot. Hey, thank you all very much for listening. Thank you very much for joining me, Bobby. I hope you all have a very good afternoon, very good evening.
Yeah, you